Hello everyone. Welcome to Sleepcrime. I'm really glad you're here tonight. If you're listening from somewhere in the world, I'd love to know where you're joining from, so feel free to leave a comment below. And if you enjoy quiet true crime storytelling like this, please consider liking the video and subscribing. It really helps this channel grow. Tonight's stories all begin with moments that didn't seem important at first. Small concerns, quiet decisions, ordinary days that slowly became something no one expected. They remind us that sometimes the biggest turning points arrive without warning. So wherever you are, get comfortable, settle in, and let the night slow down around you. Now let's begin. Story 1. The story usually starts in 1979, on a stretch of beach where people expect sunlight and noise, not fear. Two girls notice a man who doesn't belong in the scene. He watches too long, smiles when no one has spoken to him. One of the girls vanishes soon after. Nearly 2 weeks pass before anything is found at all, and when it is, it's only a skull. A drawing of the man circulates everywhere. Papers print it, stations hold it up to the camera, and then, by chance more than planning, a detective sees that face again, not in a lineup, but on television. A dating show. The man is laughing, winning, leaning in to kiss a woman who has no idea who he is. At the time, no one is calling him a serial killer. No one is attaching numbers to his name. That comes later, much later. The thing that changes everything doesn't begin on a stage or a beach, but years earlier, with a child who survives. 1965. 13 years before the game show. A 13-year-old girl named Morgan Rowan arrives in North Hollywood with her family, carrying boxes and nerves and the feeling of being new in a place that doesn't slow down for anyone. She's quiet. Catholic school during the day. California freedom everywhere else. There's a club she likes. The Hullabaloo. Music spills out into the parking lot, and teenagers hang around just to watch bands arrive, hoping to feel close to something exciting. One night, standing outside with a friend, Morgan notices two older guys staring. Smiling, her friend nudges her, says almost casually that one of them is named Rod. A few minutes later, the friend drifts off to meet someone else. Morgan stays behind, alone now but not alarmed. Rod is paying attention to her, and at 13, attention can feel like validation. He's interesting, older, focused on her. She thinks it's flirting. She doesn't realize she's about to lose consciousness. When awareness returns, she's upright, crushed against a wall. A dumpster has been shoved in front of her, pinning her there. Her body hurts in ways she can't immediately place. Rod is gone. No footsteps. No apology. Just absence. She manages to get free. Somehow. I remember how quiet it got after that. Not peaceful. Just empty. For 3 years, Morgan does everything she can to avoid him. She memorizes faces in crowds. Changes routines. The fear dulls, but it never disappears. Eventually, she starts going out again. Carefully. Then, late August of 1968 arrives. She's 16 now, and she learns that her family is moving back to New York. The news lands hard. California has become her world, fragile as it is. She doesn't want to leave it like this. For days before the move, she and her friends decide to go out one last time on the Sunset Strip. The street is packed. People singing, drifting, talking to strangers like it's normal. Like nothing bad ever happens there. And then she sees him. Rod isn't approaching. He's just there. In the crowd. Close enough to notice. Sometimes you don't need confirmation. Your body already knows. Morgan tries to ignore him. She tells herself not to ruin the night. An hour passes. Maybe more. Then her friends suggest getting food at a diner. Everyone piles into the car. She sits in the middle. Familiar faces on either side. Before she can react, Rod slides into the driver's seat and pulls away. She hasn't told anyone what happened years earlier. Not the dumpster. Not the beating. Now she's trapped between panic and the hope that staying calm might keep her safe. At the diner, Rod barely acknowledges her. That almost makes it worse. She gets up to use the bathroom and passes a payphone. Her father had a habit of taping a 10-cent coin inside her shoe, just in case she ever needed help. She takes it out, holds it, stares at it longer than she should. She thinks about the 4 days she has left, about not wanting to disappear early. She doesn't make the call. That kind of choice doesn't feel like a choice when you're young. Back at the table, Rod announces he'll drive them back. Morgan stays silent. She gets into the car again, hoping this closes the night. It doesn't. On the way, he turns off suddenly and stops at a house. Says there's a party. Loud music pours out. Her friends are excited. Morgan isn't. Inside, she doesn't sit. She paces. Watches exits. Tries to stay close to people. She steps away for just a moment. Rod appears. Grabs her. Forces her into a bedroom. This is the moment that doesn't end her story. It redirects it. Years later, when the man from the beach and the television screen finally has a name, Morgan will still be here to say it. Morgan collapses onto the bedroom floor. Before she can even orient herself, Rod reaches for a length of metal and drops it into brackets on both sides of the door. The sound is dull, final. The door is sealed. She backs away without fully understanding what's happening, one step at a time, until there's nowhere left to go. Her shoulders meet the wall. She tells him he can't do this. The words come out steadier than she feels. The punch lands between her eyes, hard enough that light bursts and then disappears. A knife appears in his hand. He cuts the tie at her neck. Warmth spreads, and in that moment her thoughts narrow to a single idea, that the blade has gone too far, that this is how it ends. He doesn't stop. Clothes are sliced away. The room feels enormous and distant. When he stands to remove his own pants, he sets the knife down on the floor, just beyond her reach. Morgan locks onto it. Nothing else exists. She inches her body, thinking only that if she can pin it beneath her, he won't be able to use it again. What follows fractures her sense of time. She fights. She keeps fighting. It's her first experience of sex, and it feels like being dropped into something endless and black, like falling down a well that has no bottom. She prays for it to end. Not for rescue, just for the pain to stop. It's strange how your mind goes very quiet when you think you're about to die. The music in the house is still loud. Too loud. No one inside hears what's happening. But outside the room, something shifts. Her friends realize she's missing. Fists hit the door. Voices rise. Rod's mood changes instantly. He turns his rage on Morgan again. She's slipping in and out now, barely aware of where she is, when the window beside her explodes inward. Glass everywhere. Cold air rushes in. Mike. He's climbed from outside and smashed through the window. The room fills with people. Rod is standing there, exposed from the waist down, her blood smeared across his shirt. He doesn't try to explain. He just tells them to take her. The sound of the glass breaking, that's the moment things reverse. Morgan runs. Out of the house, into the street, clutching a torn blouse around herself. Mike catches up and pleads with her to get help. She refuses. She won't let her parents know. She's certain of that. They go to Mike's house instead. Someone calls the police. Or maybe they don't. She never finds out. An officer shows up. She won't speak. She barely looks at him. He leaves. What should have been reported isn't. Not formally. Not fully. When she arrives in New York weeks later, the person she used to be doesn't come with her. She's withdrawn, heavy with something she can't name. Her parents assume she's grieving California. They don't ask more. October of 1968. A letter arrives from one of the girls who had been there that night. When Morgan opens it, a newspaper clipping slips out and lands on the floor. It says that Rod Alcala raped and nearly killed an 8-year-old girl. The room tilts. Guilt floods in, fast and suffocating. She tells herself this is her fault. That she could have stopped it. That she should have spoken. Should have told someone. Her thoughts spiral into places that scare her. She tries calling back to Los Angeles, but she has nothing to go on. No address. No certainty the child survived. The girl becomes a presence in her dreams. Not a person, just a shape. A ghost without a face. Morgan spends hours in libraries, scrolling through old Los Angeles papers, searching for any sign of what happened next. Rod Alcala's name is everywhere. Articles, mentions, rumors, but no arrest. Then nothing. He disappears from the pages entirely. What Morgan can't know is that he hasn't vanished at all. He's crossed the country. New York now. And soon, a television news voice will report from North Tarrytown about a body found near an apartment building, the daughter of a wealthy family, missing for nearly a year. And the pattern is starting again. The body of Ms. Hover is taken to the medical examiner. Up there, they're trying to decide whether what happened to her was an accident or something darker. Nothing is certain yet. The year is 1971. 3 years have passed since Morgan survived her attack. Not far from where she now lives, 2 young girls walk into a post office in New Hampshire. They're killing time. Waiting. And behind the counter, taped to the wall, there's a poster they've seen before but never really looked at. Most wanted. This time they stop. The face staring back at them isn't a stranger. It's their summer camp counselor. The man they know as John Berger. But the name printed underneath doesn't match. It says Rodney Alcala. That single moment sets everything in motion. Soon after, a phone rings. It's the FBI calling from New Hampshire. They're calm, almost casual. They say they've taken Alcala into custody. There's disbelief on the other end of the line. Relief too. Someone says it out loud, "You've got him." It feels unreal. But it's true. Alcala had crossed the country, changed his name, and slipped into a new life. At the time of his arrest, he's working at a summer camp for teenage girls. Teaching photography. Only girls. That detail lingers. He's also involved with the camp owner's teenage daughter. Police don't need to stretch their imaginations to see what might have been coming next. On the 12th of August, 1971, he's escorted onto a plane and flown back. Handcuffs. Paperwork. The sense that this is finally over. Someone even says it, that he's going away for decades. At that point, it really did feel finished. Detective Steve Hoddle believes the same thing. To him, the case looks solid. Kidnapping. Rape. Attempted murder. There's physical evidence from Alcala's home. Witnesses. And there's a survivor who can identify him. But one piece is missing. And without it, the whole structure starts to lean. Around that time, Morgan goes to a library. She looks it up herself. She reads that the 8-year-old girl, the child who survived, won't be testifying. The reason isn't spelled out. But Morgan fills in the blanks anyway. She assumes the worst. That the girl is too damaged. That her life is already over. That kind of silence can feel louder than bad news. When prosecutors realize the child won't take the stand, they pivot. They offer a plea deal. Alcala agrees to plead to child molestation. In return, the other charges are reduced. Then the judge speaks. 1 year to life. The room freezes. Because those words don't mean what people think they mean. They mean parole is possible after just 12 months. All Alcala has to do is convince a board that he's changed. In August of 1974, after less than 3 years behind bars, he walks out. Released back into society. Some believe he manipulated the system. That he charmed psychologists. That he said the right things, wore the right expressions. Someone signed off on him as rehabilitated. Cured. Sometimes confidence gets mistaken for recovery. But he isn't done. Not even close. June 20th, 1979. 5 years after his release. Huntington Beach. The day is bright. Loud. Ordinary. 12-year-old Robin Samso and her friend Bridget are doing cartwheels near the sand when a man approaches them. He introduces himself as a photographer. Says he'd like to take their picture. Mentions magazines. Makes it sound professional. This is familiar territory for him. He's done it before. He knows how to make it seem harmless. As he's photographing the girls, a neighbor walks over. She doesn't like the look of it. She asks if everything's okay. The man doesn't answer. He turns his face away and runs. Just takes off. That reaction alone tells you something wasn't right. Not long after, Robin separates from Bridget. She has ballet class at 4 o'clock. Bridget lends her a bike so she won't be late. An hour passes. Then Robin's mother gets a call from the studio. Her daughter never arrived. She starts dialing immediately. First Bridget's house. That's when she hears about the man on the beach. The camera. The way he ran. And suddenly a normal afternoon is no longer normal at all. Police respond quickly. Bridget sits with a sketch artist and does her best to describe the man from the beach. Lines are adjusted. Eyes narrowed. Hair length debated. When it's finished, the drawing goes everywhere. Newspapers. Television. Store windows. The city starts looking. Everyone does. For the man in the sketch. For Robin. Days pass with nothing to hold on to. Those days stretch in ways that don't make sense. The waiting becomes its own kind of horror. Robin Samso isn't just missing, she's remembered constantly. Blonde hair. Blue eyes. Healthy. Open. The kind of child people notice because of how easily she smiles. Her mother remembers how eager Robin always was to please. How love came naturally to her. How people were drawn in without trying. It's the not knowing that breaks you first. On July 2nd, 12 days after Robin vanished, her body is found in the foothills near Sierra Madre, more than 40 miles from the beach. Her mother insists on seeing her. She doesn't understand why there's hesitation, why officials resist. Then someone explains that identification took days, that something is different. There was no hair. The words land heavily. Robin's mother collapses into a grief that doesn't lift. It changes the shape of her life permanently. Los Angeles absorbs the shock, then tightens with fear. A child has been murdered, and there is no suspect. Leads go nowhere. Tips pile up and dissolve. Late one afternoon, a detective with the Huntington Beach Police Department gets a call. A parole officer is on the line. He says he has someone worth looking at. A parolee who resembles the composite sketch. The name is Rodney Alcala. It's late. The department has been running on exhaustion. 18-hour days. Longer. The detective decides to look into it first thing in the morning. For now, he goes home. But the name sticks. Rodney Alcala. It won't let go. That night, the television is on. Reruns. Familiar noise. And then a dating show appears on the screen. One contestant is introduced as a photographer. Confident. Smiling. It's him. Rodney Alcala is standing there, flirting, winning. The face from the sketch, alive and animated, broadcast into living rooms across the country. The detective just stares. You don't expect recognition to feel like that. The realization hits fast. Hard. This isn't coincidence. He starts calling the station immediately, telling anyone who will answer that he's identified the man from the drawing. But another thought intrudes. The woman on the show. The contestant. If she chooses him. The episode was recorded the year before. Her name is Cheryl Bradshaw. When the host announces the winner, it's Alcala. He's selected. The audience applauds. Backstage, though, something doesn't sit right. Cheryl feels it immediately. She calls the show's producer and says she won't go on the date. She doesn't explain it neatly. Just says she can't. That he makes her uncomfortable. The producer agrees without argument. Tells her not to go. Sometimes instinct doesn't need evidence. It may have saved her life. On July 24th, 1979, police arrest Rodney Alcala for the murder of Robin Samso. He hasn't fled. He hasn't hidden far away. He's been living at his mother's house, only a short distance from where Robin's body was discovered. A search warrant is issued. Officers comb through the house. They don't find forensic proof tying him directly to Robin. But they do find something else. A receipt. A storage unit. Seattle. When investigators open it, they realize this case is much larger than they imagined. And what they find there will finally begin to explain just how long Rodney Alcala has been doing this. Inside the storage unit, the volume alone is overwhelming. Boxes. Envelopes. Stacks that seem to multiply the longer investigators stand there. More than 1,000 photographs are pulled out. Young faces. Some barely teenagers. Some younger than that. Many posed in ways no child ever should be. There are also images that don't show crimes, at least not yet. Girls on sidewalks. At bus stops. Walking alone. Pictures that look like the beginning of something, not the end. Rolls of film that were never developed. And then there's the jewelry. Loose pieces. Earrings that don't match. Items with no explanation for why they're there at all. Two of them matter immediately. Gold ball earrings. Robin was wearing gold ball earrings the day she disappeared. For the first time, there is something solid tying Rodney Alcala directly to her. February of 1980. The trial begins. The courthouse fills until there's nowhere left to stand. Robin's mother, Mary Ann, takes her seat behind the man who killed her daughter. Her hand is inside her purse, wrapped around a gun. No one knows. Not the guards. Not the judge. Not even Robin's sister sitting beside her. Marian is calm, almost unnervingly so. She keeps whispering the same thing, that everything is going to be okay. She didn't look angry. She looked finished. She believes this is what she's there to do, to end it herself if she can. And then something shifts. She later says she smelled Robin's shampoo, felt warmth in her hand, like a presence pressing back. Her fingers won't move. She hears her daughter's voice telling her not to do it. When the moment passes, the gun stays in the purse. On April 30th, 1980, the jury returns its verdict. Guilty. The sentence is death. Marian doesn't celebrate. She never will. She says it's a poor exchange for her child's life. But maybe it keeps someone else safe. That hope doesn't last. For years later, the conviction is overturned. The state Supreme Court rules that Alcala didn't receive a fair trial. He speaks to reporters. Says justice has failed him. Says he didn't do it. The family listens as the ground shifts beneath them again. They're dragged back into courtrooms, back into hearings, back into the language of procedure and appeals. Every reversal felt like the loss happening again. Alcala is tried again, found guilty again, sentenced to death again. For a moment, it feels final. Then in 2001, it happens again. Another reversal, another opening, another chance for him to walk free. By then, the toll on Robin's family is visible. Exhaustion replaces grief, but it never erases it. The process itself becomes a punishment. In 2003, a new prosecutor takes over the case. Matt Murphy looks at the file and knows immediately this won't be simple. He goes back to the evidence. Not the testimony, not the headlines, the objects. That pouch of jewelry from Seattle is tested again. This time with tools that didn't exist before. DNA is extracted. Profiles are built. Alcala's DNA goes into national databases. California, New York, cold cases that have been waiting for decades. Science doesn't forget the way people do. The matches that come back aren't what anyone expected. Not one, not two, but many. And suddenly, the case of Robin Samso is no longer just one case at all. The DNA results change the scale of everything. For matches come back in Los Angeles. Jill Barkham and Georgia Wickstead, both killed in 1977. Charlotte Lamb in 1978. Jill Parento in 1979. Then New York adds two more names. Cornelia Crilly, 1971. Ellen Hover, 1977. 6 women. 4 of them murdered before his appearance on The Dating Game ever aired. That's the moment the case stops being debated. What investigators had suspected for decades finally hardens into fact. Rodney Alcala isn't just violent. He isn't just opportunistic. He's a serial killer who slipped through gaps again and again. By the year 2010, 9 years after his conviction was overturned yet again, the third trial finally reaches its end. This time, the charges are broader. Not just Robin Samso. 5 murders in California State Court. And then the courtroom hears from someone no one expects. A woman stands and introduces herself. She says her name is Tali Shapiro. She explains that she was 8 years old in 1968, and that she lived. When she said her name, the room shifted. Tali remembers the morning clearly. Warm weather, a dress crocheted by her nanny. She was supposed to take the public bus to school, only a few blocks away, but she didn't like going alone. A car pulled up. The driver spoke through the open window, asked if she needed a ride. She repeated what her parents had told her, never accept rides from strangers. He told her he wasn't a stranger, said he knew her parents. At the time, that didn't seem impossible. Her house was always full of people, music industry friends, visitors coming and going. She didn't feel fear. She didn't want to be rude. She got into the car. He asked what time school started, then said they had time, said he wanted to show her something. A poster. She remembers feeling uncomfortable then. That's when the car turned toward his house. She followed him inside. That's where her memory stops. She wakes up a month later. A coma. No understanding of what happened. No explanations. No conversations. Her parents never spoke about it, and neither did anyone else. When she returns to school, classmates stare at her like she's someone who shouldn't be there anymore. Survival doesn't always come with answers. Afterward, her parents move the family to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. They want distance. A restart. When the attempted murder case goes to trial in 1971, they refuse to let her testify. They won't let the courtroom take any more from her. Tali grows up not knowing how she survived. Only that she did. She later learns there were 2 reasons she's alive. One is a police officer. The other is a man named Donald Haynes. In 1968, Haynes is a sales representative, driving through Los Angeles for work. He's on Wilshire Boulevard when something catches his attention. A car stopped awkwardly in a crosswalk. Inside, a man is talking to a young girl on the sidewalk. Smiling. Too engaged. Haynes can't look away. Something feels wrong. He watches the girl get into the back seat, and instead of driving on, he follows. Almost immediately, he notices the car has no license plate. His thoughts race. He doesn't know what to do, only that leaving feels worse than staying. The car stops at a house. Haynes watches as the girl gets out and walks inside with the man. And without realizing it yet, he's about to become the reason she lives. Donald Haynes stands there for a moment, realizing he can't just drive away. He thinks about what could happen if he does nothing, about what might already be happening behind that door. So he looks for a pay phone and calls the police. Almost at the same time, Officer Chris Camacho receives a call about a possible kidnapping near Los Palmas and Sunset. When he arrives, a man is waving him down on the corner. Haynes doesn't hesitate. He explains what he saw. The car, the girl, the house. He points it out immediately. Camacho calls for backup without wasting a second. He walks to the front door and starts knocking. Inside, there's movement. Fast. Someone pulls a curtain aside, just enough to look out. Camacho sees his face clearly. He asks him to open the door. Says he needs to talk. The man answers calmly at first. Claims he just got out of the shower. Asks for a minute. But nothing about him lines up. He isn't wet. There's no towel. He's naked. And there's something else. A tightness. Anger. A kind of pressure in his eyes that doesn't relax. Camacho tells him again to open the door. He presses his ear against it. He hears sounds that don't belong in a quiet house. Moaning. Strain. Within seconds, he kicks the door in. Inside, the layout barely registers. A dining room to one side. A living room to the other. Straight ahead, the kitchen. And on the floor, a little girl. Blood everywhere. A metal bar pressed across her neck. The sight stays with him. It always will. Some scenes never really leave you. She isn't moving. She isn't breathing. There's no pulse. For a moment, everyone believes she's already gone. Camacho moves through the house, checking for the suspect. He sees him fleeing out the back. There's a chance, just a chance, he could chase him down. Instead, he turns back. Protocol says secure the scene. Don't touch anything. But he can't leave her like that. He grabs a towel, lifts the bar from her neck, sets it aside, and then she gags. Air rushes in. She's alive. An ambulance is called immediately. She's rushed to the hospital, hanging on by the thinnest margin. As officers search the house, Camacho finds a wallet on a table. Inside is identification. A name. A face. Rodney Alcala. He recognizes him instantly. Later, at the hospital, a doctor tells Camacho something that lands hard. If that bar hadn't been removed when it was, she wouldn't have survived. Her airway would have stayed closed. That knowledge never fades. Back in the courtroom decades later, the room is silent. Tali Shapiro's testimony has left no space for noise. As she steps down, she notices a man she's never met, but has known about her entire life. She walks straight to him, calls his name. Donald Haynes doesn't recognize her at first. Then she tells him who she is. He understands immediately. That was the moment everything connected. She tells him he's the reason she's alive. He can barely respond. The weight of it hits him all at once. Later, Tali reflects on it simply. She says she had 2 guardian angels that day. One was a police officer. The other was a stranger who paid attention when it would have been easier not to. As she leaves the courthouse, reporters crowd around her, asking what should happen to the man who tried to kill her. Her answer is blunt, unfiltered. She doesn't know yet that someone else is listening closely. Someone who has been tracking every detail of this trial. And what comes next will finally decide how this story ends. Morgan is at home when she sees the footage. The 8-year-old girl who survived. Older now but unmistakable. Watching Tali speak, watching her stand there, steady, it breaks something open in Morgan. She starts crying before she realizes she is. For years, she carried the blame quietly. She told herself that if she had spoken sooner, maybe none of this would have happened. She wanted to reach out to Tali, but guilt kept getting in the way. She imagined being hated, judged. She spends days trying to write the right words, crossing things out, starting over. In the end, it's just an apology. Honest. Simple. And she sends it. The reply comes back. Tali says there's nothing to forgive. That she doesn't hold Morgan responsible for any of it. That sentence changes everything. Sometimes forgiveness lands where nothing else can. When they finally meet, Morgan asks first. Asks if she can hold her. Tali says yes. Morgan hugs her and doesn't let go. For a long moment, neither of them moves. It feels like something unfinished has finally been set down. March 9th, 2010. The California trial for 5 murders reaches its end. Among them, the killing of 12-year-old Robin Samso. The jury files in. The courtroom stills. The verdict is guilty. All 5 counts. First-degree murder. After more than 3 decades, the families hear words they weren't sure would ever come. There is relief, but it's quiet. Heavy. The kind that doesn't celebrate. Then the sentence. Death. One of the mothers says she has prayed about it, that she has given her anger away, that she won't let him take any more from her than he already has. Justice doesn't look the same after that much time. But even that isn't the end. After the conviction, authorities release 120 photographs recovered from Alcala's storage locker. Faces. Moments frozen. The hope is that someone somewhere will recognize someone who never came home. 5 years later, a woman named Kathy Thornton sees one of the pictures. She knows the face instantly. It's her sister, Christine, gone for 39 years. For the first time in her life, Kathy has an answer. She can finally stop wondering. She can finally lay her sister to rest. Then, quietly, the final headline appears. Rodney Alcala has died in prison while awaiting execution. One of the mothers reflects on her daughter's short life. Says that even in 12 years, it mattered. That somehow her death stopped him. That maybe this was the purpose her daughter would have accepted. Meaning doesn't erase loss, but it can sit beside it. It takes a long time for the survivors to understand this part. That when evil enters your life, it changes you. Permanently. But it doesn't own you. And it never gets the last word. Story 2. Andrew Hawkinsmith was 9 years old. At that age, his world was small and mostly safe. Home. Family. The pawn shop his parents ran in Danville, Kentucky. And the newest piece of it all, his baby sister, Naomi. She was just over a year old, and Andrew took that role seriously. Big Brother wasn't a title to him. It was something he carried around quietly, the way kids do when they feel proud but don't know how to explain it. Nothing about that morning suggested anything different was coming. The Hawkinsmith family was close in a way people noticed. Michael and Angie ran a local pawn shop, a place filled with odds and ends, games, old movies, bits of electronics. It wasn't glamorous, but it was familiar. Warm. Andrew spent most days there, especially after his parents decided to homeschool him, so they could all stay together during the day. The shop wasn't just where they worked. It was where life happened. Michael had another role too. Part-time youth pastor. Faith mattered deeply in their household. Church wasn't just a place they went on Sundays. It shaped who they trusted, who they leaned on, who they listened to. That's how Pastor Alan Keith entered their lives. He was respected, well-known, a religious figure who preached across the county. To Michael and Angie, he wasn't just a pastor, he was a mentor. To Andrew, he felt closer than that. Like family. Keith had another side, one that raised fewer questions than it probably should have. He owned pawn shops, bought gold, traded in valuables, scripture on one side of his life, precious metals on the other. Somehow the two coexisted. Under Keith's guidance, Michael began working at one of the shops, ABC Gold Games and more. The arrangement seemed to work. The business helped support the family. Naomi had just been born. Andrew was thriving. There was no obvious reason to be uneasy. Until the morning of September 20th, 2013. It was a weekday. The shop was open. Andrew was there with his parents and his sister, just like always. Then the sound came. Gunshots. Screaming. It didn't register all at once. Not as a single moment. More like fragments crashing together too fast to sort out. Andrew ran. He hid. And somehow, through fear that didn't belong to someone his age, he found a phone. The emergency dispatcher answered. A child's voice came through the line. Quiet. Controlled in a way that didn't sound natural. There was a robbery. Someone was still inside. And somewhere nearby, a baby was crying. The dispatcher kept him talking. Asked where he was. Told him to stay quiet. Told him help was coming. Andrew whispered that he was scared. You can hear how careful he's being. Like he already understands the stakes. The call stayed connected. Andrew didn't hang up. He listened. He waited. He tried not to make noise. Police were dispatched immediately. Units moved fast. There was no hesitation. A robbery involving a child on the line doesn't get delayed. In less than 10 minutes, closer to 6, the first officers reached the pawn shop. From the outside, something was wrong. The front door was locked. They didn't waste time trying to force it open. Glass shattered. Entry was made. What they were about to walk into, none of them knew yet. At that point, they're still thinking robbery. They're not prepared for anything else. The first officer through the door later said his mind was fixed on one question only. Is the shooter still here? That thought didn't leave as he stepped inside. To the right, in the lobby area, there was blood. Not a drop. Not a spot. A wide smear that didn't belong in a place people usually browsed for used games and old electronics. Experience didn't help much. It never really does. What they found next confirmed what they had been dreading. 3 bodies on the floor. Once you see that much blood, you already know the situation has shifted. They didn't stop to study the scene. Not yet. No one knew if the person responsible was still hiding somewhere inside the building. The officers moved quickly, clearing room by room, calling out, scanning corners. They weren't looking for a suspect first. They were looking for a child. The dispatcher stayed on the line, guiding them, following that quiet voice from earlier. And then relief. Andrew and his baby sister were found still hiding. Shaken, crying, alive. Both children were taken straight to the police station. No visible injuries, just fear clinging to them. Back inside the pawn shop, the space filled up fast. Uniforms, detectives, crime scene technicians. The store itself complicated everything. Guns, ammunition, valuables everywhere. Objects that could mean something or nothing at all. Near the register, a woman's body lay on the floor. On the opposite side of the counter, a man. A trail of blood led further back, where a third man had collapsed. One of the bodies had been moved, positioned so that if someone looked through the front door, they wouldn't immediately see it. Each victim had been shot multiple times. Some of those shots appeared to have happened after they were already down. Shell casings were scattered. Early on, investigators could only say they likely came from a small caliber firearm, possibly a .22. Outside, word spread fast. Andrew's grandmothers, Charlene and Barbara, rushed to the shop. They didn't know details yet. They just needed to see their family. From a distance, they saw flashing lights. Yellow tape. Police cars stacked along the street. They weren't allowed past the perimeter. That was enough. You can tell from the way the officers stop you that something's already final. One of them broke down right there. She later said she knew, before anyone spoke a word. Inside the store, identities were confirmed. The 2 victims at the front were Michael and Angie Hawkinsmith, the owners, Andrew's parents. The third victim was identified as Dan Smith, 60 years old, a regular customer, someone known in the local gold buying circuit. At first glance, the scene pointed in a familiar direction. A pawn shop, a robbery, a violent one that spiraled out of control. But then the details started pushing back. Dan Smith's suitcase was open on the counter. Inside it, cash. Still there. The register hadn't been emptied either. More than $1,000 in U.S. currency remained untouched. Wallets hadn't been taken. That didn't sit right. When the money's there, you have to ask what the motive really was. Detectives stepped back and reassessed. If it wasn't about stealing, then why these 3 people? Was Dan Smith the target? He was known to carry large amounts of cash. He followed a routine. His wife explained it clearly, bank first, then a loop of pawn shops on specific days. Investigators traced his movements that morning. One of his stops was Lawson's Jewelers in Harrodsburg, less than half an hour from the Hawkinsmith shop. Security footage showed him walking in with the same briefcase. Relaxed, smiling, chatting casually with the clerk. No tension, no sign that he sensed anything wrong. Less than an hour later, he was dead. There was no one tailing him. No suspicious interaction caught on camera. Nothing that clearly marked him as a target. The theory stalled. No leads emerged. No suspects surfaced. 3 families were left grieving. And whoever did this had vanished through a rear garage door, slipping into the alley behind the shop. The town absorbed the news in disbelief. Danville wasn't a place where something like this happened. A small community. A college nearby. Familiar faces. Now 2 young children were without their parents. Local media descended. Reporters repeated the same stunned detail. One of the children had called for help and hidden his sister. And among the voices expressing shock was Pastor Alan Keith, the same man who had introduced Michael to the pawn business. He posted online, speaking of loss, of sleeplessness, of knowing all 3 victims personally, calling them friends. At that moment, he appeared like everyone else, grieving and searching for answers. The police put the word out fast. Tips were coming in, but none of them pointed anywhere solid. Whoever had done this was still out there, and the lack of answers made that fact feel heavier by the hour. For a while, investigators had to work under a quiet, unsettling assumption. They didn't yet know why the Hawkinsmiths were killed, which meant they couldn't rule out the possibility that Andrew himself might still be in danger, for reasons no one understood. The children were kept under protection at the station before being placed with their grandparents. The town stayed on edge. People asked the same question in different ways, over and over. Why this family? Why these people? Then a phone call came in. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't frantic. Just specific. A name was mentioned. Kenneth Allen Keith. That's when detectives paused and looked at each other. The name wasn't unfamiliar. He had history in the pawn business. He ran one in Somerset. And he was also a pastor, leading a small church in Pulaski County. The pattern started to show itself. Nearly everyone connected to the case shared one thing. Church. Leadership. Trust built through faith. It's strange when the overlap keeps repeating like that. The caller explained why the name mattered. Keith had been saying things about the murders that felt off. Too detailed. Too personal. When investigators contacted him, the feeling didn't ease. It intensified. Pastor Keith lived almost an hour away. Yet on the morning of the killings, he said he'd been in Danville. According to him, he drove more than 40 miles to pick up his wife's medication from a pharmacy where he wasn't a regular customer. When detectives asked him directly if he'd been in town, he didn't hesitate. Yes, he'd been there. What followed was a careful, step-by-step explanation of his morning. Where he went, when he arrived, what he did. It felt rehearsed. As they dug deeper, another piece surfaced. Pastor Keith had once been a full owner of the Hawkinsmith pawn shop. Financial trouble had forced him to step away. Ownership transferred to Michael and Angie. Keith hadn't taken that loss quietly. Investigators learned he felt wronged, that the shop had been taken from him, that something meant to be as had slipped away. For the first time, motive came into focus, but it immediately collided with his alibi. Keith insisted he was inside the pharmacy when the shootings happened. If that could be confirmed on camera, the entire theory would collapse. An alibi like that, it either ends the case or reshapes it. Detectives moved fast. They pulled surveillance footage from the pharmacy. The timestamp showed Pastor Keith inside at 9:24 in the morning. That was only minutes after the estimated time of the killings. On paper, it looked impossible. Two places. Same morning. Too close together. The investigation wavered. At that point, there was only one person who could clarify what really happened inside the shop before the chaos began. Andrew. He was 9. Still processing loss that hadn't even settled into words yet. But he was also the only eyewitness who had been there from the start. When investigators spoke with him, his answers came slowly. Not linear. Pieces surfaced when something reminded him. A sound. A question. A pause. Then he began describing the morning. September 20th didn't feel different at first. The family arrived at the shop and opened up at 9. Andrew settled into a corner with a game. His parents moved around the store, preparing for the day. A customer came in. The gold buyer. Dan Smith. Andrew's father spoke with him like always. Angie stood near the register, rocking Naomi. Nothing about it felt unusual. Dan was familiar. Part of the routine. Andrew drifted back into his game. That's where his memory lingered. In the ordinary moments, just before everything shifted. Between short lessons with his mother, Andrew drifted back to what he liked most, trying out the games from the shelves. It felt normal. Boring even. The kind of morning where nothing stands out afterward. Then someone else walked in. Andrew noticed him right away. Not because he knew him. Because something felt off. The way he moved. The way his voice sounded when it suddenly got louder. The man pulled out a gun. He told everyone to get on the ground. And they did. There wasn't any hesitation. Fear took over faster than thought. Angie pulled Andrew and Naomi close, huddling with them near the floor. From where they were, Andrew could still see parts of the store. Enough to know what was happening. Enough to remember it later. The gun went off again and again. Andrew didn't understand the sound. Not at first. To him, it reminded him of darts. Sharp. Strange. Wrong. In the middle of it, he saw his father. Michael begged. Just a few words. Please stop. Andrew watched his dad move, and then stop moving. Kids remember moments like snapshots. Not the whole thing. Just pieces that never fade. The gunman turned toward Dan Smith next. And that's when Angie understood something Andrew couldn't yet put into words. Whatever was happening wasn't going to stop on its own. She knew the order didn't matter anymore. She looked at her children and made a decision. There was one place left. She told Andrew to take Naomi to the back. Andrew crawled. The office felt far away, even though it wasn't. He pulled himself forward, set his sister on the couch, then climbed up beside her, pressing close. From there, he heard more shots. For this time, then nothing. Silence stretched out, long enough to feel unreal. Andrew knew he couldn't stay hidden forever. He had to know. Slowly, he crawled back toward the doorway and looked out. His mother was on the floor. Blood pooled around her. She wasn't moving. Andrew went back to the office without making a sound. At that moment, there were only two things in the world. Him and his sister. Naomi started to stir. Andrew picked her up and went for the phone. His hands were shaking, but he dialed anyway. The dispatcher answered. A child's voice explained that his family had been killed. While he waited for help, Andrew did something no one told him to do. He covered his sister with his body. Like that might somehow be enough. He didn't describe it as bravery. He just did what made sense to him. Neither child had been physically hurt. Andrew would later say he ran fast. Faster than he ever had. He just didn't want to die. What Andrew shared afterward, slowly, carefully, started to pull the case back into focus. His memory of the man. The timing. The way the sounds didn't feel loud. That detail mattered. Investigators went back to what they already had. Pastor Kenneth Allen Keith owned a silver minivan. Security cameras near the pawn shop had captured a similar vehicle before and after the shooting. Andrew's call gave them something else. A precise window. Suddenly, the pharmacy alibi didn't close the door anymore. It left it open. The drive from the pawn shop to the pharmacy was possible within that time. On October 9th, 2013, 19 days after the murders, police moved. 3 search warrants were issued. One for Keith's home, one for his church, one for his pawn shop in Somerset. An investigator went in pretending to be a customer. Inside, they found something small but telling. A box for a threaded device, something that could be altered into a homemade silencer. It explained the strange, high-pitched sound Andrew had described. Outside, more evidence. Spent .22 shell casings. A target that had been fired at. Practice. The shell casings recovered from Keith's pawn shop were tested against those from the Hawkinsmith scene. They matched. Same weapon. Pastor Keith was arrested inside his own shop. No resistance. For the families, there was relief, but it was tangled with disbelief. This was someone they had trusted. Someone who preached. Someone who prayed beside them. It's hard to reconcile who you thought someone was with what they did. Prosecutors made a decision. To spare Andrew, his sister, and the families from a long trial, they offered Keith a plea deal. It meant no death sentence, but it also meant the truth would stand. While the court process moved forward at its own pace, Andrew found a quieter way to release what he couldn't say out loud. He started drawing. Pages filled up with sketches. Panels. Short lines of dialogue. A comic book of sorts. Not meant for anyone else. Just a place where the noise in his head could land somewhere solid. What he had survived didn't really fit into words anyway. People around him kept saying the same thing. That he'd done something extraordinary. That he'd saved his sister. That he'd stayed calm when no one would expect a child to. Andrew didn't frame it that way. He remembered his parents. How steady they were. How his father made hard things look simple, like they were always manageable if you stayed focused long enough. Sometimes kids mirror what they've already been shown, without realizing it. Michael and Angie didn't survive that morning. But in the end, they did what mattered most to them. They kept their children alive. Years passed. On May 26, 2017, Andrew turned 13. And on that same day, Pastor Keith stood in court to finalize his deal with prosecutors. The sentence was life in prison without the possibility of release. No more appeals. No future outside prison walls. What drove him there, envy, money, resentment, ended with him. It wouldn't touch anyone else again. Andrew grew up. He stayed close to family. Naomi grew alongside him, carrying pieces of a mother she'd never consciously remember. Recently, Andrew became engaged, stepping into a future that once felt impossible to imagine. No one took his parents from his life entirely. Not really. People still tell him he looks like his dad. Sounds like him. Carries himself the same way. They say Naomi has their mother's face. Andrew doesn't argue. It's not something he tries to hold on to. It's just there. The memories didn't disappear. They stayed, quietly shaping who he became. And in that way, his parents never really left at all. Story 3. She entered the world in late October of 1994, just days before Halloween, on the edge of Cleveland, Ohio. Her name was Sabrina. From the beginning, Stability wasn't part of the picture. Alcohol, violence, shouting behind closed doors. The kind of childhood that teaches you how to stay quiet before it teaches you how to trust. By the time she was old enough to understand what foster care meant, she was already moving through it. Then Lisa Naffel appeared. A social worker. Someone who dealt with abuse cases for a living. Someone who thought she recognized something familiar in Sabrina, making it easier to say yes when the placement came up. A house. 2 parents. Sisters. Routines. Expectations. The idea that this time things might stick. For a while they did. Nearly 20 years after Sabrina was born, in early August of 2014, her name was read aloud in a courtroom. Not as a child in need. Not as a foster placement. As a defendant. She was on trial for killing Lisa Naffel, the woman who had taken her in. The knife became the focus almost immediately. Stainless steel. Bent from force. Prosecutors asked if she recognized it, if she understood what kind of strength it takes to warp metal like that. 2 years before that moment in court, police had walked into the Naffel home and found Sabrina still holding it. Blood on the blade. Blood on her clothes. Lisa Naffel was already dead. It's hard to connect those two versions of her, the kid who needed help and the person standing there that night. Investigators didn't believe she acted alone. They couldn't. The violence felt too chaotic, too intense. So they looked at the only other adult in the house. Kevin Naffel. Husband. Foster father. He was questioned carefully, encouraged to talk, reminded that his wife had been killed in that home. But there was someone else there that night. Someone smaller. Someone whose story hadn't been fully heard yet. Megan Zanella. Lisa's biological daughter. On the night everything fell apart, Megan was inside the house with her younger sister Haley. When the attack started, she tried to intervene. 13 years old. Not strong enough. She called for help. Dialed 911. And then waited. 6 minutes can feel endless when you're listening to someone die in the next room. When sirens finally cut through the night, Megan ran outside to meet them. Officers mistook her at first. Weapons raised. Confusion in the dark. She waved her arms, shouting for them to hurry. Inside, police called out names. No answer. Then, just past the stairs, they saw her. Sabrina. Standing there. Knife still in her hand. Blood everywhere. The moment stretched. Seconds thick with uncertainty. Officers shouted commands. Again and again. Sabrina stared back, unmoving, like she hadn't fully come back yet. Then the knife hit the floor. Her hands went up. That pause, before she dropped it, it didn't look like fear. As one officer secured Sabrina, another moved toward Lisa's bedroom. The smell. The blood. Too much of it. Enough to know there was nothing left to save. While clearing the room, a sound cut through everything else. Crying. From the closet. They opened the door and found Haley. Small. Hiding. She'd crawled in there when the attack started and stayed silent as long as she could. Later, at the station, Sabrina said she couldn't remember what happened. Said the night was gone. But when detectives brought Megan and Haley into the room, the story fractured. The knife. The wounds. The truth pressed in from too many sides. I had a knife, she said. And you stabbed Lisa. She didn't answer after that. Years earlier, long before police tape and interviews, Lisa had met Sabrina the way she met many teenagers. Through work. Through files and conversations that hinted at more than they ever spelled out. Sabrina was 16 then. No permanent home. No place that felt safe enough to relax. She wanted what most kids want, but rarely ask for directly. Normal. Lisa believed her family could give that to her. Kevin agreed. They'd done this before. Megan remembers the day they picked Sabrina up. The first impressions. The quiet politeness. The hope that maybe this girl could be a big sister, not just another temporary presence. Sabrina went to class. She kept her grades up. She talked about coping strategies, about managing emotions, about trying to stay steady. From the outside, it looked like progress. Inside the house, something else was forming. Quietly. Slowly. Looking back, there weren't obvious warning signs, just small things that didn't feel important at the time. And by the time they did, it was already too late. For more than a year, by most accounts, Sabrina seemed to settle into the Naffel household. She laughed with Megan and Haley. She blended into routines. Even Kevin, Lisa's husband and Megan's stepfather, appeared to be part of that normalcy. From the outside, it looked like a foster placement that was actually working. Then the balance shifted. Kevin started finding reasons to be alone with Sabrina. Long stretches, closed doors, missed dinners. Lisa noticed it first, quietly at first. Text messages, questions sent during the day. Kevin brushed them off, told her she was reading too much into things. Megan noticed it too. Not all at once. Just a feeling that something wasn't sitting right between Kevin and Sabrina. It didn't happen suddenly. It was more like small moments that didn't line up. Lisa's work made it impossible for her to ignore patterns like that. She spent her career dealing with sexual abuse cases, listening to children describe things they didn't yet have words for. She understood vulnerability. She understood how it gets exploited. Sabrina had never known stability. Not real stability. Kevin seemed to understand that better than anyone else in the house, and how to use it. To those who knew the case later, the word was clear. Predator. No softer version of it. In that sense, Kevin wasn't different from the men Lisa had spent years trying to protect children from. But suspicion isn't proof. With nothing concrete, Lisa talked about leaving. Divorce. Sending Sabrina back into foster care. Kevin pushed back. He argued they should wait. Let Sabrina finish high school. Just a little longer. Lisa stayed, but she changed the rules. She became stricter with Sabrina. Limited her movements. Made sure she stayed home. Tried to keep physical distance between her and Kevin. At some point, for reasons no one has fully explained, that protectiveness widened. Sabrina was kept apart from the girls too. The house tightened. Tension settled into every room. There were arguments. Silence. Glances that lingered too long. It stopped feeling like a home, more like everyone was watching everyone else. On the morning before the killing, Megan saw something she couldn't shake. As Kevin left for work, Sabrina hugged him. Not a quick one. She leaned in and whispered something Megan couldn't hear. It didn't feel right. That night, during dinner, Sabrina's phone wouldn't stop lighting up. Message after message. Even after bedtime, the buzzing carried through the walls. Then, just after 1 a.m, it stopped. And almost immediately, screaming filled the house. Megan woke up confused, heart racing. She ran downstairs. She saw Sabrina over her mother. The knife. The blood. The motion didn't stop. Megan yelled. Told her to get off. At one point she grabbed her, tried to pull her away, but Sabrina shoved her back. Megan ran. Not away from the house, but to the phone. She dialed 911. Her voice shook as she tried to explain what was happening. Words tangled. Panic swallowed whole sentences. She kept switching between pleading for help and trying to physically stop Sabrina from continuing. I'm sorry, she kept saying. Over and over. Like apologizing could slow time down. The call lasted more than 6 minutes. Those minutes don't really end, they just repeat. Afterward, Megan stopped sleeping normally. The images didn't fade. They still don't. Sabrina was taken to a hospital after her arrest. Her hands were cut. Defensive wounds. Injuries from Lisa and Megan fighting back. Once stabilized, she was brought to the station. Detectives wanted one thing at first. Not a confession. An explanation. They knew she had done it. They'd seen her with the knife. What they didn't know was why. The interview stretched on. Sabrina said she couldn't remember anything. Claimed she had taken too many pain pills. Said she blacked out. Said she woke up in the hospital without knowing Lisa was dead. An hour passed. Nothing changed. A veteran detective noticed small things. Fingers touching her face. Scratching. Shifting. Signs he'd learned to read over decades. Nervousness. Avoidance. It wasn't what she said. It was how carefully she avoided saying anything at all. Others thought the case was simple. Caught in the act. Open and shut. But something about the denial didn't sit right. So the detective asked for Kevin. Kevin agreed to come, but not alone. He asked for a lawyer. And once the attorney arrived, Kevin didn't answer questions at all. The silence, this time, felt deliberate. That was the moment it stopped feeling like just one person's story. Parmenter didn't bring them in by telling the truth. Not at first. He said the conversation would stay focused on Lisa's work. Nothing personal, nothing confrontational. Just background. Enough to get Kevin through the door, and enough to keep his attorney from blocking it outright. It didn't last. Questions drifted. Not sharply, just slightly off course. What had the house been like the night before Kevin went to work? What had the atmosphere been? Small things. Michael Koenig cut in almost immediately. This wasn't about Lisa's job. This wasn't relevant. They were crossing lines. Parmenter pulled it back, tried again. reminded them why they were there. A woman had been killed in her own bedroom. Someone in that house knew more than they were saying. Then he asked about the marriage. That shut everything down. Divorce was off limits. Kevin's relationship with Lisa was off limits. The attorney drew a clean boundary and held it there. It stood out. Not just the refusal, but how fast it came. It felt like they were protecting something, not answering a question. What really changed the room was Sabrina's name. Until that moment, Parmiter didn't know about any inappropriate dynamic between Kevin and Sabrina. He hadn't been told. He hadn't seen it yet. So he asked, almost casually, about Kevin's relationship with her. The response was immediate. Tense. Defensive. Michael spoke before Kevin could. Kevin stayed quiet. After that, there was nothing left to get from them. In the days that followed, Kevin remained in the house, watching over Megan until her biological father could come get her. During that short stretch, Megan noticed things she couldn't unsee. The morning after her mother was killed, Kevin was already sorting through Lisa's belongings. Throwing things out, clearing space. She hadn't died slowly. She hadn't been sick. She'd been murdered hours earlier. That same day, Kevin was on the phone with his insurance company. Lisa had been carrying the coverage. All of it. Kevin had shifted his own policy and the kids' policies onto hers months before, quadrupling the amount tied to her name. When the call ended, the payout totaled just under $800,000. He withdrew it immediately. It didn't make sense, not that fast. The money didn't sit. Cars. A camper. Renovations. It moved quickly like it was never meant to stay. Kevin also tried to visit Sabrina in jail. Every day. Every request denied. Megan noticed. She wondered why someone would push so hard to see the person accused of killing their spouse. Then came the axe. Kevin brought it into Lisa's bedroom, the room where she died. He chopped the bed apart, the mattress, the frame, destroyed it piece by piece. Megan watched. Even after she left the house and moved back with her father, the unease didn't fade. At the funeral, Kevin asked people to pray for Sabrina, not for Lisa. When Megan looked at him that day, there were no tears. No visible grief, just stillness. That's when the idea settled in her mind and didn't leave. It was like she'd already disappeared for him. Months passed. The case slowed. Everyone agreed on one thing. Sabrina had done it. But the reason remained missing, and Kevin's behavior stayed unresolved. 6 months later, Sabrina agreed to talk. The meeting wasn't an interrogation. It was a proffer, a controlled conversation. Defense, prosecution, and the suspect in the same room, with one expectation, full honesty. If it worked, as Karen Koval listened, a pattern emerged. The blackout story, the memory gaps, they didn't feel random. They felt selective. Protection, not confusion. From inside her cell, Sabrina showed regret, not only for what she had done, but for what it had done to the rest of the family. That never went away. So Koval stopped circling. She said what everyone had been circling around without naming. What led to this wasn't just one person. There had been someone else involved. Eventually, Sabrina stopped circling it. She said his name, Kevin Naffel, her foster father. What investigators pieced together wasn't sudden or impulsive. It followed a familiar pattern. Attention first. Special treatment. Small gifts. Private conversations framed as trust. Secrets that slowly separated Sabrina from everyone else in the house. She was 17. He made her feel chosen. Kevin talked about her future, about helping her get into massage therapy school. He told her she should practice on him. Framed it as training. As support. It didn't stay there. Once it crossed that line, it kept crossing it. Every time they were alone. That kind of control doesn't show up all at once. It builds quietly. One moment stood out even years later. Sabrina had undergone emergency surgery. Her appendix had ruptured. She was in a hospital bed, still recovering, when Kevin visited. Shortly after, it happened again, in a hospital room, after surgery. Even recalling it made people physically uncomfortable. Kevin also made sure she understood the rules. This stayed secret. Always. Remember what would happen if anyone found out. She'd be removed from his care. He'd lose his license. Everyone would lose everything. That pressure never lifted. Over the following year, Kevin tightened his hold. After each encounter, he talked about Lisa. Not as his wife. As an obstacle. He rewrote the story until Sabrina began to believe it. If Lisa were gone, everything would be okay. Divorce, he said, wasn't an option. There was Haley. their 3-year-old daughter. Custody would go to Lisa. Kevin couldn't accept that. At one point, he told Sabrina he couldn't live like this anymore. Said he might end his own life. That scared her. She didn't want that on her conscience. When someone puts that weight on you, it doesn't feel like a choice. Kevin laid it out carefully. He couldn't do it himself. Prison would take him away from Haley. But Sabrina, she wouldn't get caught. He promised her that. She was supposed to stage it. Take jewelry. Make it look like a break-in. But the plan fell apart the moment Lisa woke up. Sabrina froze, standing there, the knife in her hand. There was no turning back. When Lisa fought, when Megan tried to intervene, something in Sabrina snapped. She described it later as blind panic. Rage without direction. When asked why she didn't stop, her answer was simple. It was already too late. She thought she was going to prison anyway. So she finished it. Later, in the quiet of an interview room, she admitted something else. Even before that night, just thinking about Lisa made her chest pound. Fear never left her. Not before. Not after. She said she still couldn't believe she had done it. At first, prosecutors were cautious. Anyone could invent a story to shift blame. But Sabrina's demeanor had changed. Gone was the confusion, the evasiveness. Her account stayed steady. Details didn't slide around. She also gave them a name. Autumn Pavlik, a friend from high school. According to Sabrina, Autumn knew what Kevin was planning. When investigators knocked on Autumn's door, she wasn't surprised. She said she'd been expecting them. That kind of reaction, you don't forget it. Autumn explained that Kevin had talked to her too. She said she thought she might be able to stop it. That if she could break his influence over Sabrina, maybe none of it would happen. By then it already had. Investigators believed Kevin might still talk if confronted. So they wired Autumn and sent her to meet him. When she accused him of conspiring to kill his wife, he didn't deny it. He didn't argue. He didn't even react. For detectives, that silence mattered. With statements from Sabrina and Autumn, Parmiter moved quickly. An arrest warrant was issued. Officers went to Kevin's house. He was found asleep, in Sabrina's old bedroom. He didn't seem shocked when they took him into custody. It was unsettling how normal it all looked. At the station, Kevin asked for his lawyer almost immediately. But by then, it didn't matter. The charges were already filed. An 11-count indictment. Conspiracy to commit murder. Sexual battery involving a minor under his care. When the news broke, Megan saw her mother's face on television again. Not as a victim of a random act, but as the center of something far darker than anyone had imagined. When the news finally reached Megan, it didn't come with drama. Her father said it plainly. Kevin had been arrested. She remembers hearing it and feeling nothing. No rush of relief. No shock. Just an empty pause where a reaction should have been, like her body hadn't caught up yet. At trial, the picture filled in slowly. 12 witnesses took the stand. Teachers, social workers, family friends, people who had known the Naffel household from the outside. They talked about what they'd seen after the murder. Kevin's behavior, his fixation, the way he hovered around Sabrina, even after Lisa was gone. Some said they'd noticed him acting inappropriately with her long before the night everything collapsed. Even his closest friend testified. David Strunk told the court about something that had stuck with him. Weeks after the killing, Kevin had insisted on showing him photos of Sabrina. Modeling pictures. Suggestive ones. Kevin talked openly about wanting to visit her in jail, about needing her to know he was still there for her. This was the girl accused of killing his wife. And he couldn't let go. That kind of attachment, after everything, it didn't make sense. The jury deliberated for 9 hours. Then they came back. Guilty. Aggravated murder. Sexual battery. Every charge stood. The words landed heavy, one after another, until there was nothing left to interpret. Later, prosecutor Karen Koval spoke with a journalist who asked whether winning the case brought any sense of closure. He described it as betrayal layered on betrayal. Kevin betraying Lisa. Sabrina betraying Lisa. Kevin betraying Sabrina. Sabrina betraying Kevin. It sounded neat when said that way, but it missed someone, because no one had been betrayed more than Megan. She had seen it happen, tried to stop it, tried to save her mother, and then lived with the aftermath when the house emptied and the silence moved in. Some losses don't fade, they just change shape. When asked to name what she felt now, Megan didn't hesitate. Anger. That was the word. Anger that someone who spent her life helping others had been taken. Anger that there was no fixing it. Sabrina, for her part, didn't fight the verdict. She pleaded guilty, accepted responsibility. She was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole decades later. Kevin received the same. In the years that followed, Megan and Haley filed civil lawsuits. The court awarded them more than $6 million in damages. Money that couldn't replace anything, but acknowledged what had been taken. From prison, Sabrina gave interviews years apart. In both, she asked for forgiveness. She said she understood there was more than one victim. She admitted her selfishness, said she knew nothing she could say would ever undo what she'd done. Her words were careful, measured, full of regret. But for Megan, apologies couldn't reach where the damage lived. Some things you carry whether you want to or not. Megan spoke openly about the pain that stayed, the milestones her mother would never see, the future that had been cut short without warning. Over time, she grew into herself, stronger, independent, not untouched, but not broken either. She chose a path that made sense to her, studying criminal law, learning systems, learning how justice works and how it fails, hoping to one day help others navigate the kind of loss she'd lived through. In that way, she stayed close to her mother, because Lisa had wanted one thing above all else, to help people, and that part of her never disappeared. Story 4. 9 days before anyone really started paying attention, Lauren walked into the campus police office and said something felt wrong. Messages were coming in from numbers she didn't recognize. The tone wasn't playful. It wasn't confused. It was threatening. Over the next week, she kept calling. Again and again. 14 times in total. Each call logged. Each concern noted. And quietly dismissed. Security footage from earlier that month would later resurface. It showed Lauren meeting a man in a university parking lot. The date on that recording mattered. It was October 9th, 10 days before someone else would report seeing a strange figure nearby. Her roommate remembered that day for a different reason. Lauren had already made up her mind. She was going to end the relationship, except the name she knew him by wasn't real. And without what Lauren left behind, none of that would have come together at all. She was careful, thoughtful. She didn't leave a confession or a warning exactly. More like breadcrumbs. Enough for someone to follow, eventually. The man who sometimes showed up in a Deadpool costume wasn't just awkward or eccentric. He was deliberate, calculated, skilled at shaping stories that worked in his favor. Someone who, in hindsight, never told the truth unless it served him. Lauren grew up in Pullman, Washington. A small town, quiet streets, the kind of place where neighbors recognize each other's cars. She lived with her parents, Matthew and Jill, who were deeply involved and deeply proud. Her childhood was stable, happy. School came easily. Friends stayed close. She was dependable in that way people don't always notice until later. If you needed her, she showed up. No questions, no clock watching. From early on, she moved differently. Faster, lighter. She climbed trees before most kids could balance properly. Fear didn't slow her down. It never really did. Sports gave her an outlet. Track and field, especially. She wasn't just good. She was focused. At 10 years old, she placed second at the USA Junior Olympics. That kind of thing doesn't happen by accident. By the time she finished high school, the University of Utah took notice. A scholarship followed. September of 2015. Lauren and her parents arrived in Salt Lake City together. The campus felt enormous compared to home. More than 20,000 students moving in every direction. Her parents worried. She didn't. Not really. She adapted quickly. New friends. New routines. One of those friendships became central almost immediately. Alex. We were roommates that first year. It didn't take long. We just clicked. The years passed quickly after that. Lauren stayed busy. Classes. Training. Social life. She handled it all without looking overwhelmed. When she talked about the future, her whole face changed. She wasn't just an athlete. She was sharp. Funny. She danced. She made people laugh without trying to. Graduation was close, and she couldn't wait. Then came the night of September 1st, 2018. The weekend before classes settled in. She had just turned 21. A reason to celebrate, even if only a little. Saturday night. Downtown Salt Lake City was loud and crowded. Students everywhere. Music spilling onto the sidewalks. Lauren and Alex headed to a popular bar known for live bands and dancing. It was close to campus, about 15 minutes away. At the door, they were stopped by the bouncer. Tall, friendly, easy smile. He introduced himself as Sean Fields and waved them through. Inside, the night moved fast. Drinks, music, laughter. Midnight came sooner than expected. They decided to head back. Studying waited the next day. As Lauren turned toward the exit, someone touched her shoulder. It was the bouncer, the same man she'd been exchanging glances with all night. They talked briefly. Nothing dramatic, just enough. Before parting, he asked her out. September 2nd. Lauren got ready for their first date. Lauren had never really dated anyone seriously before. Nothing long-term. Nothing intense. So when Sean entered her life and seemed to fit so easily, it felt reassuring. He listened. He checked in. He remembered small details. He said he was a student too, studying computer science. A little older, yes, but not in a way that alarmed her. 28. Stable. Calm. After their early dates, Lauren would come home smiling. Her friends noticed that first. She talked about him like someone who finally felt chosen. He worked part-time. He seemed independent, grounded, the kind of person who knew where he was going. But it didn't take long for the tone around her to shift. Not dramatically, subtly. Her friends began to see hesitation where there hadn't been any before. Lauren started second-guessing herself. Small decisions suddenly required reassurance. The constant attention Sean gave her began to feel less like affection and more like surveillance. Texts, calls, one after another. She always answered. Always. As if not responding carried consequences she didn't want to test. Within weeks, Sean was everywhere. Sleeping over, hanging around the dorm, making friends with people on her floor. Once he knew enough faces, doors stopped being barriers. He didn't need a key card anymore. Someone always let him in. Lauren grew quieter, tired in a way sleep didn't fix. The version of her friends we're used to, it started slipping out of view. It wasn't one big thing. It was more like she was shrinking a little. October 1st came fast. 1 month after they met, Sean told her he had something important to give her. Something meant to keep her safe. It was a gun, a loaded handgun. That detail didn't stay private for long. When her friends found out, they didn't debate it. They went straight to their resident assistant, Diamond. They explained everything. The intensity, the control, the fear they couldn't quite name yet. What happened next was quieter than expected. Diamond wasn't told to call the police. Instead, she was instructed to write an email to campus security. Outline the concerns. Document the behavior. She did. The next day, October 2nd, the message raised alarms about Lauren's safety. About a non-resident boyfriend spending constant time in the dorm. About a possible weapon. About the unsettling feeling that Sean might be monitoring Lauren's movements. Then nothing. Days passed. No reply. No follow-up. The inbox stayed empty. On October 9th, Lauren found something that finally cut through the confusion. An identification card. Sean's, except it wasn't. The photo was his. But the name wasn't. Neither was the birth date. The card belonged to someone else. A man named Melvin Rowland. 37 years old. Lauren didn't hesitate. She searched the name online. What came back wasn't ambiguous. It was heavy. Multiple felony convictions. Crimes involving minors. Sexual offenses. Parole violations. Prison sentences that kept repeating. And one detail sat colder than the rest. He was currently on parole. It was already late that night. Sean, Melvin, was due to arrive at her dorm any moment. Lauren didn't leave. She waited. When he walked in, she confronted him. Told him everything she had learned. Every record. Every charge. The shift was immediate. The warmth disappeared. His voice hardened. He denied it all. Said it wasn't true. Said she was mistaken. She didn't back down. She told him it was over. The conversation dragged on for hours. Lauren pleading. Holding her ground. Eventually he left. October 10th. The next day. She believed it was finished. It wasn't. Messages started coming in from unfamiliar numbers. One after another. They claimed to be his friends. The tone escalated quickly. Lauren replied, asking them to stop. She blocked them. More appeared. She warned she would go to the police. The messages grew darker. Stranger. She noticed something unsettling. The spelling. The phrasing. The same mistakes Sean used to make. One message stood out. It claimed Melvin had died in a car crash. Said there would be a funeral. Insisted she attend. That's when it stopped feeling random. On October 12th, late in the afternoon, Lauren finally called campus police, her voice steady but strained. She said she was scared, that she might be in danger. No one called her back. Days passed. Nothing changed. No updates. No follow-up. The messages didn't stop either. They intensified. The case had technically been assigned to a detective, Kayla Daleth. On paper, at least. In reality, she was on vacation. No one else stepped in. Lauren gave police everything she had. Names. Screenshots. The criminal record she uncovered herself. Still, no one checked something critical, his parole status. That single step would have changed the urgency of everything. It never happened. Lauren realized she was running out of patience. And time. She tried a different route. She called the Salt Lake City Police Department. Bigger department. More resources. She explained everything again, hoping someone would finally push the case forward. They sent her right back to campus police. More than a week had passed since the first warning email. Still no action. Lauren didn't stop calling. Over the next several days, she contacted police more than 20 times in total. She documented everything. She kept pressing. She refused to disappear quietly. October 19th. Around that time, Melvin bought a Deadpool costume. The movie had been out earlier that year. It was popular, easy to blend in. Halloween was coming up. But before that, he used it for something else. Security footage later showed him on campus. 10 days after Lauren ended things. Face hidden. Costume on. Moving slowly. Watching. Searching. At just after 4 in the afternoon, Lauren had no idea he was nearby. He carried a small black bag. It didn't draw attention at the time. Later, police would find out what was inside. A loaded handgun. A .40 caliber Beretta. 3 days later, October 22nd, cameras caught him again. Same behavior. Same bag. Same silent pattern. That evening around 8, Lauren finished her last class and headed back to her dorm. Alone. Routine. Ordinary. She called home while she walked. She did that often. Almost every day. Just to talk. To check in. Her parents, Matthew and Jill, were on speakerphone, listening as she filled them in on nothing in particular. Then something changed. Noise. A sudden disruption. A voice yelling. I grabbed the phone and called emergency right away. We didn't even know where she was. That was the moment everything shifted. Police finally reacted with urgency. Officers flooded the area. They searched. Called her name. Nothing turned up. Her parents kept calling. Friends started looking. Word spread quickly across campus. Then a student called police. They'd found something on the ground. Lauren's belongings. Scattered. Not far apart. But Lauren herself was gone. Squad cars arrived in waves. Dogs were brought in. A perimeter went up. Students noticed. Fear moved faster than facts. The university issued a shelter-in-place alert. A suspect description followed. Melvin Rowland. The search became public. His face appeared on television. Time felt heavy. Every minute stretched. Investigators reviewed footage again. One detail stood out. A man matching Melvin's description leaving campus. Just after 8:20 that night, he was seen walking away from the parking lot. On foot. Calm. Purposeful. He reached a light rail station. Someone picked him up. Hours passed with no idea where he went. Then a call came in. A woman said she recognized the man on television. She sounded shaken. She told police she had spent the evening with him. They met through a dating app. He used a different name. She picked him up at the station. Dinner. Time at her apartment. He showered. Left after midnight. She didn't know who he really was until she saw his face on the news. I didn't think anything was wrong until I saw the broadcast. Around 1 in the morning, an officer spotted him walking downtown near 200 East and 500 South. When Melvin realized he'd been seen, he ran. Down the sidewalk. Into the dark. Officers followed. He slipped away again. Forced his way into a nearby church. Barricaded himself inside. The neighborhood around the church went quiet all at once. Streets blocked. Lights flashing. No one knew what was about to happen. Then the sound broke through it. Gunfire. Sudden. Sharp. Police didn't wait. They pushed through the heavy wooden doors, weapons raised, moving fast. Inside, they found Melvin Rowland on the floor. He was already dead. At the same time, another search was still unfolding. Officers were still trying to find Lauren. Her dorm room had been checked. Her belongings had been recovered earlier. but there was no sign of her. Later that night, attention shifted to a car. A small silver sedan connected to Melvin. It was parked not far away. Officers approached carefully, looked inside. There was a body in the vehicle. An urgent call went out for medical help, though it was already clear what they were facing. On the night of October 22nd, Lauren's parents received a phone call. It came from the university's track and field coach. The words on the other end of the line were the kind no parent is ever prepared to hear. Shock spread quickly, through her family, through her friends, across the campus. It didn't feel real. None of it did. In the days that followed, the university held a vigil. Candles, silence, students standing together, trying to understand how someone so present could be gone. Matthew and Jill McCluskey couldn't stop thinking about the calls their daughter had made, the warnings she had given, how often she asked for help, and how little changed. Public pressure grew. Questions mounted. Eventually, the university addressed the situation in a press conference. The president stated that there was nothing campus security could have done to stop what happened. For Lauren's parents, that moment cut deeply. When I heard that, I felt sick. Truly sick. The volume of unanswered calls became impossible to ignore. Dozens of attempts. Escalating fear. What should have taken one response stretched into silence. The family decided not to let it end there. They filed a lawsuit against the university, arguing that the system meant to protect their daughter had failed her. Not just to seek accountability, but to force change. Matthew said later that continuing without Lauren felt unbearable. But staying still felt worse. Out of that resolve came something new. The Lauren McCluskey Foundation, built in her name, focused on campus safety reform, student protection, institutional responsibility. Funds from the settlement were directed to that mission. Not as closure, as action. What followed reached far beyond one campus. Protests, signs taped to windows, conversations that hadn't happened before, policies rewritten, training expanded, new task forces created. The university committed to honoring Lauren's legacy in visible ways, including a track and field facility that would carry her name. You still hear her name every day here. The message behind it all was simple and overdue. When someone asks for help, believe them. When someone says they're scared, act. From that idea came what's now known as Lauren's Promise. A commitment to listen, to take threats seriously, to respond with urgency instead of doubt. It spread, campus to campus, community to community. Students began to speak up. Some said plainly that because of that promise, they were still alive. The loss didn't fade, but it changed things. And Lauren is remembered, not only for how she died, but for what finally began to shift because she refused to stay silent. Story 5. At first, it looks like a chase story. A man drifting from one place to the next, taking cars, threatening people, leaving fear behind him. He wants to be a cop. He's wearing the idea of it more than the job itself. And the one person who ends up closest to stopping him isn't law enforcement at all. It's the person trapped beside him, 19-year-old Andrea Mays. The warning signs start earlier, quietly. The day before Andrea is taken, on July 24, 2016, Julie Van Cleve's phone won't stop lighting up. Messages keep coming in about her daughter, Kaylee Sawyer. 23 years old. Missing. The volume of text suggests movement, activity, but not clarity. Something feels wrong. Either Kaylee is choosing silence, cutting herself off from everyone she knows, or someone else is touching that phone. Neither option sits right. Julie and Kaylee's boyfriend call police, not because they have proof, but because waiting feels worse. The next day, the case shifts hard. A young officer, Isabel Ponce, walks into her station shaken, talking fast, saying she needs to speak to someone now. What she's carrying isn't rumor. It's personal. After a confrontation at home, she believes her husband, Edwin Lara, has something to do with Kaylee's disappearance. He's 34, training to be a police officer. He has access, discipline, and just enough authority to move without suspicion. Isabel talks for hours. She tells detectives Kaylee's belongings were hidden in their shed, that Edwin took her service gun, that he left with her car. By the time officers act, he's already gone. It's one of those moments where everything lines up too late. You can feel how close they were to stopping him. Edwin drives straight north. No detours. By evening, he reaches Salem. Andrea Mays has no idea any of this is unfolding. She's finished work. It's hot, close to 90 degrees. She sits in her car, window down, trying to cool off before heading home. That's when a hand appears at the window. A gun. Close enough to touch. For Andrea, time collapses. The fear is immediate, physical. She thinks this is where it ends. And somehow, inside that panic, something else kicks in. Awareness. Control, or at least the performance of it. Enough to stay alive. They drive for hours. Long stretches of road. No conversation that matters. Eventually, Edwin pulls off near the interstate and stops at a rundown motel. Security cameras catch fragments. Edwin at the counter, asking for a room. Andrea beside him, wiping her face, quiet, trying not to draw attention. The clerk doesn't react. Nothing looks urgent enough to interrupt routine. Inside the room, Edwin gives orders. He tells her to undress, to shower while he watches. Later, frustrated, he shoves her onto the bed and forces a sleeping pill into her hand. While Andrea is being held in that room, police are focused somewhere else entirely. They're still trying to find Kaylee Sawyer. There's no body, no location, just blood-stained clothing recovered from Edwin's shed. To the district attorney, that absence matters. Without final proof, there's still a chance. A thin one, but enough to keep pushing. I was holding on to hope, one officer later said. The idea that Kaylee could still be alive, waiting somewhere, just beyond reach. Kaylee is a dental assistant in Bend. She hasn't been seen since the weekend. Her family says she went out for a walk near Central Oregon Community College. That detail lingers longer once Edwin Lara is named a person of interest. He works security at the college. At that point, everything starts connecting in ways you wish it wouldn't. Back in Bend, time stretches. Waiting replaces everything else. Phones are checked. Nights feel longer than they should. Years later, when Dateline's Keith Morrison sits down with Kaylee's family, they describe that first night without her. How they replayed memories because it was the only thing they could still reach. Her mother remembers a conversation from when Kaylee was 17. Kaylee had said she wanted to be known as smart, strong, funny. For 23 years, her mother says, nothing made her smile more than her daughter. Kaylee's grandparents, Jim and Sharon Walden, talk about the future they expected. A wedding. A life unfolding normally. Kaylee and Cameron were in love. Engagement felt close, not hypothetical. They were good together. That's how everyone describes it. Her best friend, Naomi, laughs softly when she talks about Kaylee's plans. Or maybe they were possibilities more than plans. Kaylee wanted everything. At different moments, she imagined herself as a plastic surgeon, a police officer, a chef, a photographer. She hadn't narrowed it down yet. She just didn't want to miss anything. Kaylee's future never narrowed itself. It stayed wide, nothing boxed in. While prosecutors and detectives stayed focused on Bend, convinced answers were still hiding there, the situation in Salem was quietly collapsing around Andrea. Inside the motel room, the air shifted. Just before Edwin moved closer, Andrea said her phone was ringing. It wasn't true, but it worked. The sound didn't matter, the idea of it did. Edwin froze, then backed away, pacing, scanning the walls like they might answer him. He grabbed his phone and made a call no one could hear. Outside, the night stayed still. No engines, no rotors, nothing. Edwin became certain the police were already there. Andrea begged him to let her go. The fear in her voice didn't calm him. It sharpened him. That kind of panic doesn't come from what's happening. It comes from what someone thinks is about to happen. A few rooms away, another day was starting. A man named Jack Levy was loading camera equipment into his truck. He was heading out early, hoping to photograph butterflies at a nearby national park. Just before 5 in the morning, movement caught his eye. A man appeared suddenly, armed. Behind him, a young woman restrained, struggling to keep up. Edwin demanded the keys. Jack hesitated. Edwin fired. Jack survived the wound to his chest. But in the chaos, Edwin pulled Andrea away and ran. They crossed the street, heading for a gas station, disappearing between parked cars and fluorescent light. At that moment, police still had no idea Andrea existed. Their case revolved around Kaylee. Everything did. But that changed because Jack lived. He told officers what he'd seen. Not details. Impressions. A terrified girl. Handcuffs. A gun. He watched them sprint toward the gas station. Witnesses there filled in the rest. Edwin took a car. A family inside it. Forced them to drive. And slowly, painfully, police understood the woman with him wasn't Kaylee. It was Andrea. When Julie Van Cleve learned that, something inside her finally gave way. The hope she'd been carrying, it had nowhere left to stand. You can hear when someone stops asking questions. That's usually when the worst answers are coming. On the interstate, the car turned into a pressure cooker. Edwin now held more lives. Nima, 17, driving. His 14-year-old brother beside him. Their grandmother in the back seat. She didn't speak English, but she didn't need to. She understood the gun. She understood fear. She screamed at Edwin, over and over. He responded by taking every phone in the car and handing them to Andrea. Then he aimed the gun at her face and told her to throw them out the window. She did. After that, Nima spoke up. He told Edwin he already had what he wanted. The car. He asked him to let them go. And inexplicably, Edwin agreed. He pulled over, ordered the family out, took the driver's seat. Andrea followed them onto the roadside, not knowing if the next second would be the last. Sirens were getting closer now. Edwin took Andrea's phone and started recording himself. He handed it back and ordered her to post the video online. When police closed in, he grabbed the phone again and called 911. For 15 minutes, the chase stretched on. Then Edwin stopped. He gave the phone back, raised his hands, walked away from the car. Andrea was alone for the first time since her abduction. Her voice broke as she tried to follow the dispatcher's instructions, crying into the phone. But even that wasn't the end of it. Despite Edwin clearly telling the dispatcher Andrea was innocent, wires crossed between Oregon and California. Andrea was arrested too. Both of them were taken into custody. Kaylee still hadn't been found. Edwin didn't resist. He didn't hesitate. He told detectives exactly where Kaylee was. Along Highway 26, officers and paramedics arrived within minutes. Kaylee had fought to survive as long as she could. It wasn't enough. Her body was recovered. Her family was notified. At the same time, Andrea sat in a California jail. Because of miscommunication, she was labeled an accomplice. Publicly, officials described her as part of the crime. Media repeated it before the facts caught up. Both Andrea and Edwin were booked into the Tahoma County Jail. Charges piled up: kidnapping, carjacking, attempted murder, burglary, and then, quietly, the narrative began to crack. The nature of Andrea's relationship with Edwin remained under review. But inside the jail, none of that mattered. She said they treated her like she was the criminal, even after everything that had happened. She later described being searched, processed, photographed. Standing there, numb, trying to understand how survival had somehow turned into suspicion. Andrea kept asking the same question. Why? Over and over. She hadn't done anything, and she kept trying to explain that to anyone who would listen. But nothing shifted. And it turned out this wasn't the last mistake made by authorities in Redding. After Edwin was arrested, he tried to invoke his rights. Quietly, directly, and it went nowhere. According to reporting later discussed by Ashley Corslian on NBC's Urge to Kill podcast, Edwin told jail staff, while being booked into the Tahoma County Jail in California, that he wanted a lawyer. He asked when he would get one. Staff later said they understood that as a general question about procedure, not a request for legal counsel. That misunderstanding mattered. Detectives kept questioning him. At first, Edwin offered a version of events that minimized everything. He said Kaylee's death was accidental, that he hit her with his car, that he panicked, that he moved her body without thinking. But the injuries didn't fit that story. As investigators rebuilt the timeline, they returned to the night Kaylee disappeared. After arguing with her boyfriend, she walked off alone near Central Oregon Community College. Edwin was working security there. He saw her. He said he offered her a ride. She said no. That should have been the end of it. Instead, Edwin stepped out of his vehicle and ordered her to stop. At the time, campus security uniforms and vehicles were nearly indistinguishable from police patrols. Same colors, same lights, same authority implied. Kaylee realized something was wrong and tried to run. Edwin forced her into the car. The vehicle wasn't just similar to a cruiser. It was outfitted like one, including a caged back seat separated by plexiglass. Once inside, there was no way out. He drove to a secluded area. By the time Kaylee regained awareness, she understood exactly where she was. She tried everything she could reach. The lights, the radio, the horn, anything that might draw attention. That's the part investigators said stuck with them. How much she tried. The assault happened there. Kaylee was already dying. Afterward, Edwin dragged her away from the car behind a tree, and used a heavy rock to end her life. Those details changed everything. County officials were shaken. The district attorney announced they would seek the death penalty. But the case wasn't clean. Because Edwin's request for an attorney had been ignored, the judge later ruled his confession inadmissible. It didn't mean detectives doubted what happened. It meant they couldn't use his own words to prove it. So they started again. Piece by piece, they rebuilt the case without the confession and presented it to the defense. With options narrowing, Edwin's attorneys approached prosecutors with a deal. If the death penalty was taken off the table, Edwin would plead guilty and accept life in prison without the possibility of parole. The decision didn't belong to the state alone. The district attorney explained everything to Kaylee's mother, Julie, and left the choice with her. She was being asked to decide something no parent should ever have to carry. Around that same time, Andrea was released. All charges against her were dropped. No public apology followed. Not for her arrest. Not for the failures that complicated the case. Police confirmed her release in a brief statement. Her grandmother, Elizabeth Mays, had never believed Andrea was involved in any crime. She said Andrea didn't drink, didn't smoke, that she was sheltered, that she didn't understand the world she'd been thrown into. The legal process dragged on for nearly 3 years. Even after Edwin pleaded guilty, hearings continued. Statements were scheduled. Andrea was asked if she wanted to speak. She couldn't. Seeing Edwin again was overwhelming. Just being in the same room was enough to make it hard to breathe. She noticed him trying to look toward her, and that alone was too much. Some wounds don't show up when people expect them to. After everything, Andrea withdrew. Depression settled in. Post-traumatic stress followed close behind. The person she'd been before faded. Slowly. Quietly. For a long time, Andrea couldn't make sense of it. Why everything kept landing on her. Why her life felt like it was sliding backward, no matter how hard she tried to stand still. She later said it felt like she was gone for 2 years. Not living, just existing. Her family noticed it too. She wasn't herself. She stopped wanting things. Stopped caring about the future. Stopped showing up for life at all. There were no hobbies. No plans. No spark. Just quiet. And then one morning something shifted. Not dramatically. Not all at once. She woke up and realized no one else was coming to pull her out of it. If anything was going to change, it would have to start with her. That thought stayed. It followed her through the day. And then the next. She talked about learning how to be kind to herself again. About respect. About not letting what happened define every thought that came after. She said that if you let yourself live only as a victim, you never move forward. You stay frozen in the worst moment of your life. So she reframed it. Something terrible happened, yes. But it didn't have to be the end of the story. She didn't say it fixed everything. Just that it gave her somewhere to stand. Andrea began telling her story. Slowly. Carefully. Not because she planned to, but because she realized it mattered to other people. People who needed to hear that surviving didn't always look strong at first. Sometimes it looked quiet. Sometimes it looked broken. And she wasn't the only one trying to turn pain into something that could protect others. Kaylee's family did the same. Together, they filed a lawsuit against the college. Not out of anger alone, but because Edwin had been allowed to work there without a proper background check. No psychological evaluation. He'd been given access to police-grade equipment, vehicles, authority, all without the training or oversight that should have come with it. They won. More than that, the case led to a change in the law. What became known as Kaylee's Law now prevents campuses from equipping untrained security staff with police-style gear and vehicles. In the middle of their loss, Kaylee's family made a decision. They said if they couldn't bring their daughter back, they would at least try to make sure no one else went through what she did. That kind of resolve doesn't erase grief. It just gives it direction. Life moved forward for others touched by Edwin's path. Nima and his family, taken hostage that day, eventually returned to ordinary routines. Jack Levy did too. The photographer who was shot in the motel parking lot survived. The bullet passed through him, missing his spine by about an inch. Years later, he went back to the same room where it happened. Not to relive it, just to remind himself that he had moved on. Kaylee's mother learned how to keep living as well. Not by forgetting, but by shifting where her attention rested. She said that each morning she still loves her daughter more than the day before. That sometimes now she can look at a photo and smile. And that matters. On the final day of court proceedings, Andrea stood up. By then, years had passed. She had rebuilt herself piece by piece. With the quiet support of Kaylee's family, who had become part of her life through shared loss, she faced Edwin one last time. There were no cameras inside the courtroom, but afterward, she repeated what she had said when she stood there in front of him. She told reporters that she refused the version of herself he tried to create. The weak one, the powerless one. She said that wasn't who she was. She wasn't trying to be dramatic. She just sounded sure. Andrea said she wasn't a victim. She was a survivor, a fighter, someone who made it through. And in her own words, she said she defeated him. Not by force, but by living. Story 6. The afternoon settles into something quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't feel earned. June 18th, 2002. Overcast. Not cold, not warm. One of those days where the pool mostly sits there, unused, waiting. Ollie Kemp is 19. Home from college for the summer. Leawood, Kansas, a place people describe with confidence, like safety is a permanent feature. Doors unlocked. Familiar streets. Nothing ever really goes wrong here. She's working that day. Lifeguard duty at the neighborhood pool. It's routine. Her brother is scheduled to come later and take over. Nothing about the shift stands out. It's not even a pool day. Still Ollie goes. Her brother heads down in the late afternoon to relieve her. He doesn't see her in the chair. Doesn't hear her voice. He looks around longer than he expects to. That's when he calls home. Ollie's father hears there's a problem before he understands what it is. He gets in the car immediately. No thinking. Just movement. When he pulls into the parking lot, the first thing he notices is her car. Still there. He checks the water. The deep end. The bottom. He walks the perimeter. Around the grounds. Behind the smaller pool. Nothing. Her things are still there. Purse. Phone. Keys. Left behind like she planned to come back. He steps into the pump room. It's dim. Hard to see. He looks behind the machinery, then starts to leave, and turns back. Something isn't right. A leg, barely visible beneath a tarp. He lifts it. It's Ollie. I remember thinking the space suddenly felt very small. The call goes out to emergency services, his words tumbling, uneven. He can't tell if she's breathing. He says her name over and over, like repetition might do something useful. He's in shock, but he doesn't stop. He turns her, tries to keep her alive, tries to understand what he's seeing. First responders arrive. They find her on the concrete floor, barely holding on. Ollie is rushed to the hospital. Her family follows, moving through hallways without really seeing them. Time stretches. Contracts. Becomes unreliable. Someone says she's 19, like age might explain something. No one was prepared for how fast everything changed. Her parents stay close. They talk to her. They tell her to stay. To fight. Words spill out without order. Ollie had been gentle. Kind. The kind of daughter people describe easily, without having to search for examples. Born into a moment her parents still remember as pure happiness. Luck even. What happened at that pool shattered the illusion of where they lived. Of what was possible there. A safe place doesn't feel safe anymore once something like this happens. Somewhere in that realization, a different truth settles in too. There is someone responsible for this. And he is still out there. After that, nothing about the neighborhood felt ordinary again. Ollie loved her parents in a way that showed. Not loudly, just consistently. The kind of affection that sits in the background of everyday life. She was the kid people point to when they talk about things going right, kind, steady, doing well without making a show of it. School came easily to her, but she still worked at it. Grades stayed high. Whatever she tried, she seemed to handle. During her high school years, she barely slowed down. Clubs, organizations, honor groups, nearly 20 different activities pulling at her time, and she somehow managed all of them. People around her felt certain about her future. Not in a vague way. They genuinely believed she was going to leave something better behind. While doctors work in the operating room, trying to keep her alive, investigators are already back at the pool. The pump room doesn't tell a clean story. Equipment pushed aside. Tools out of place. Nothing looks accidental. Her flip-flops are there, but separated. One in one corner. One somewhere else entirely. Blood is visible. Not just in one spot. There are signs she fought back. Her fingers show injuries that don't come from falling. They come from resistance. Her face and the back of her head show blunt injuries. Forceful. Repeated. And the blood itself raises another question. Some of it may be hers. Some of it may not. Tests come back. Male DNA. That's when it stopped being abstract for them. Investigators now have a genetic profile that doesn't belong to Ollie. It should mean progress. But when it's run through criminal databases, nothing appears. No prior record. No immediate name. So they shift. If the system can't identify him, maybe someone saw him. At the hospital, Ali's father waits outside the operating room. Time loses its shape. People keep arriving. Friends. Neighbors. Students. Faces he recognizes and faces he doesn't. They wait together, quietly hoping for something, anything. He holds on to the idea that she might survive, even when it feels thin. Then a doctor comes out, followed by a nurse. They did everything they could. Ollie Kemp dies that evening. June 18th, 2002. 19 years old. No one knew what to say after that. Her parents leave the hospital and go straight to the funeral home. There's no pause between one reality and the next. Her father goes to the morgue. He stays. Through the night. He won't let her be alone. The news spreads quickly. Faster than anyone expects. Leawood isn't used to this kind of loss. The pool entrance fills with people. Flowers. Notes. Small personal items left without explanation. People keep arriving. Some cry. Some stand silently. Parents look at their own children differently now. Everyone knew Ollie. Or felt like they did. She was visible. Present. And now gone. It felt like the whole place was holding its breath. As the days pass, anger begins to sit beside grief. The idea that someone capable of this is still out there doesn't fade. It sharpens. When Roger Kemp speaks publicly for the first time, his pain is unmistakable. Raw. Unfiltered. The first week blurs into a single, relentless stretch of hours. Questions circle endlessly. Who would do this? How it happened? How they'll ever find him? Roger doesn't slow down. He can't. Staying still feels impossible. He chooses motion. Interviews. Appearances. Anything that keeps Ali's name in front of the public and the killer in someone's sights. He says the man who attacked his daughter started the fight, but he intends to finish it. You could tell he wasn't going to let this fade. For investigators, the case has changed. This is no longer an assault. It's a homicide. The rules tighten. The circle narrows. They start where they always do. Family. Close friends. Anyone who knew her well. At the top of the list is Ali's boyfriend, Phil. Phone records show she called him that afternoon, around 2:50 in the afternoon, just over 2 hours before she was found. Phil had worked at the same pool earlier that day. He'd been on shift before Ali arrived. They'd been together for 5 years. When police bring him in, he's visibly shaken. Grieving. Cooperative. Saying everything he can. For now, he's just one name on a long list. And the man whose DNA was left behind still doesn't have one. Phil is the last confirmed person who saw Ali alive. That fact alone puts weight on everything he says. When investigators sit down with him, he explains that after leaving Ali at the pool, he went straight to another pool where he also worked. He doesn't hesitate when they ask for a DNA sample. He gives it willingly. He's shaken. Not performative grief, the kind that leaves someone hollowed out. The way Ali died is hard for him to even speak about. People who knew him don't question his character. Roger doesn't either. When someone asks whether Phil could have been involved, Roger shuts it down immediately. Phil is 19. They'd been together for about 5 years. He loved her. Deeply. The lab results confirm it. Phil's DNA does not match what was found at the scene. His alibi checks out as well. Records show he really was working at another pool. With that, his name is cleared. But before he leaves the investigation entirely, Phil shares something that changes the direction of the case. Ali had been uneasy. She'd told him she felt uncomfortable when she was alone at the pool. Not panic, just a quiet awareness. A sense of being watched. She mentioned the lawn and garden workers who sometimes stared longer than necessary. One day when they were there, she asked Phil to stay after his shift ended. He did. He stayed so she wouldn't be alone. Around 2:15 in the afternoon, she told him it was okay to leave. The workers were gone. She felt safe again. That detail stuck with everyone. Police tracked down the lawn care workers who had been on site that day. They remember something unusual. A tan pickup truck, older model, 1980s era. It circled the parking lot 3 or 4 times before driving off. Then another detail surfaces. The day before the attack, Multiple witnesses recall a man lingering near the pool, hiding in bushes, holding a camera, watching the girls. 3 people say the same thing. As investigators begin piecing this together, another call Ali made that day comes into focus. She'd reached out to a friend, asked her to come by and keep her company since she'd be alone. That friend may have unknowingly come face to face with the person responsible. At around 3:15 in the afternoon, she pulls into the parking lot. She doesn't get out of her car. Instead, she honks, trying to get Ali's attention from the small attendant area inside the pool. That's when she notices a man standing there. Not someone she recognizes. White male, likely in his 30s. Thinning hair, nearly bald. He's holding a bucket. He looks at her, nods, gives a small wave. She panics, not because of him exactly, but because she worries she's causing trouble. She assumes he might be Ali's supervisor, and that honking could get Ali in trouble. So she leaves. Almost immediately, police bring her in to work with a sketch artist. She kept saying she wished she'd trusted her instincts. The sketch goes public. News outlets share it alongside the description of the tan pickup truck. Warnings air across the city. Police make it clear they are looking for this man. More than 20 detectives are assigned to the case. They don't yet know if the man seen with the camera and the man at the pool are the same person, but they can't ignore the overlap. Ali's friends take the sketch and flood the city with it. Hundreds of copies taped to windows, poles, storefronts. Anywhere people might stop and look. The tip line starts ringing. Then it doesn't stop. In just a few days, more than 400 calls come in. Everyone is watching. Everyone wants to help. But despite the volume, nothing solid emerges. The sketch is everywhere. The answers are not. By July of 2002, the pressure hasn't eased. If anything, it's heavier now. Roger Kemp and his family decide to put a reward on the table. At first, there's already a small amount offered through the tip line, about $1,000. It doesn't feel like enough. Not for something this serious. Roger starts pushing, calling people, asking, raising more, then more again. Eventually, the reward reaches $50,000. He's everywhere. Interviews, appeals, repeating the same message in different ways. He keeps saying not to second-guess the details. Even if something feels slightly off, even if it doesn't line up perfectly, just call it in. He's worried about one thing above all else, that whoever did this could do it again. He didn't want anyone convincing themselves a detail was too small. Before long, the search pushes beyond Kansas. The sketch is carried by national outlets. State police start getting calls from across the country. Names, tips, sightings. None of them go anywhere. By February of 2003, more than 8 months have passed. Ali's killer is still free. The case feels suspended in time until a familiar name resurfaces. James Strader. A few months into the investigation, someone had mentioned him. He looked strikingly similar to the composite sketch. At the time, it didn't go far. Now his name comes back with weight. Strader is wanted in both Missouri and Kansas for violent sexual assaults. Investigators in Leawood want to speak with him specifically about Ali's murder. He fits the image. He has a history of hurting women. And then he disappears. That matters. Police want him in custody. Not just to question him about Ali, but to stop him altogether. He's a repeat offender. Dangerous. Someone who doesn't stay put. Then the call comes in. James Strader has been arrested in a small town in Utah after a routine traffic stop. The reason is almost absurd. He allegedly drove off without paying for gas. A clerk notices, calls it in. Minutes later, police find him pulled over at another service station. That's it. He's detained. It felt unreal how small the moment was. Detective Langer doesn't wait. He flies out himself. When he meets Strader, the man denies everything. Says he had nothing to do with Ali Kemp's death. Langer isn't interested in the denial. He's heard it before. All he wants is DNA. The sample is taken. Sent off immediately. Everyone waits. When the results come back, they hit hard. It's not him. James Strader is not the source of the DNA found at the pool. The room went quiet in a way that felt permanent. Investigators are stunned. So is Roger. For a moment, it had felt real. Like the answer was finally within reach. The emotional drop is brutal, from hope straight into emptiness. Roger later says he doesn't think he'll ever feel a high or a low like that again. Throughout the investigation, he's terrified of one thing. That Ali's case will stall. that it will drift into that category families whisper about cold cases. He's met those families, heard their stories, seen what happens when time pulls attention away. His heart was already broken. He doesn't think he could survive that too. In homicide work, time doesn't just pass. It works against you. Investigators know this. Once a case goes unsolved beyond 6 months, the odds of resolution drop sharply. Leads dry up. Memories fade. People move. Ollie Kemp's case now sits in that dangerous space. Another day gone. Another answer missing. And a family waiting still. June 18th, 2003. Exactly 1 year later. Roger Kemp is still moving forward, but it's harder now. The calls have slowed. The tips come in less often. And it's becoming obvious that the case isn't sitting in people's minds the way it once did. Public attention doesn't disappear loudly, it just drifts. One day, he's driving on the interstate when something catches his eye. A billboard. Huge. Impossible to miss. Thousands of people passing it every day without thinking twice. And he thinks, why not? No one had really done this before. Not like this. Not for a murder investigation. When Roger suggests it, people aren't sure what to make of the idea. Some quietly doubt it'll lead anywhere. It sounded strange at first, but also kind of obvious. The billboards go up. Ali's face. The sketch. A phone number. And suddenly, strangers are looking again. Drivers slow down. Some stare longer than they mean to. For some people, it's painful to see. A reminder that the man responsible is still free. Still out there somewhere. But there's hope too. That maybe, just maybe, it will shake loose a memory someone didn't realize mattered. And it does. Almost immediately, the phones start ringing again. Faster than before. Louder. Different. Not long after, police hear the same name more than once. Ted Hoover. Multiple callers mention him. He fits the description. He drives an old tan pickup truck. And there's something else. He owns a pool service business. One caller even provides an address. An investigator drives out and knocks on the door. A maroon Ford pickup sits in the driveway. Ted Hoover answers. He can't clearly account for where he was on the day Ollie was killed. So detectives ask him directly if he'll provide a DNA sample. He hesitates. He says he needs to talk to his lawyer. That pause didn't go unnoticed. Refusing DNA doesn't prove anything. But it shifts the tone. At first, Hoover is treated like any other lead. One more name on a long list. Then police try to follow up. And he's gone. They search databases, records, addresses. Nothing. It's like he vanished. No paper trail. No trace. Eventually, investigators learn about a woman connected to Hoover, a possible girlfriend who recently moved to Connecticut. When they contact the local post office, something clicks. A man is receiving mail at her address, but under a different name. Benjamin Appleby. The pieces start lining up. Police in Kansas contact authorities in Connecticut and ask them to keep an eye on this man. When Connecticut runs the name Ted Hoover through their system, it opens another door. There are old warrants. Indecent exposure. Years back. Different state. Same man. Connecticut State Police agree to act on the warrant. Appleby is arrested at a small home in rural Litchfield County. Quiet area. Nothing dramatic about the setting. He's taken into custody and brought in for questioning. It's November 8th, 2004. More than 2 years after Ollie Kemp was killed. For the first time in a long time, investigators believe they finally have the right man. But belief isn't enough. Without DNA, there's still nothing solid. Appleby refuses to give a sample. He asks what happens if he doesn't consent. The answer is simple. They'll get it, one way or another. Eventually, he agrees. The DNA sample is taken. But the investigators don't wait for the lab to confirm what they already feel closing in. DNA is proof. A confession is final. What they want now is his words. When Benjamin Appleby is brought into the interrogation room, detectives from the Kansas State Police are already there. The room isn't neutral. It's deliberate. A massive chart covers the wall. His photograph sits dead center. Around it, lines stretch outward in every direction: dates, places, vehicles, witness notes. All of it pointing back to him. When he sits down, his expression changes. His eyes widen. He keeps glancing up at the wall, then back at the detectives, then up again. After a moment, he exhales. He says he wasn't completely honest before. They ask him what he means. He tells them he remembers being at the pool. You could see the moment he realized he was surrounded. They ask him to talk. Slowly. From the beginning. He says he went there that afternoon intending to look around, to possibly drum up business. On June 18, 2002, Ted Hoover, the name he was using then, drove into the Leawood pool parking lot. He noticed Ollie Kemp almost immediately. He says he thought his pool company uniform made him look harmless. Official. Like he belonged there. When Ollie went into the pump room, he followed. He describes it as small talk. Nothing memorable. He admits she wasn't interested. He says he stood in the doorway, blocking her exit. When she tried to move past him, things shifted. He reached for her. He minimizes it at first. Says it wasn't hard. A touch. Shoulder or hip. Something like that. Ollie pushed him away. She struck him. What he admits next comes faster. He says he took her clothes off. Says his intent was to assault her. He doesn't remember how many times he hit her. Only that he did. Over and over. He remembers hitting her face. Not long into the questioning, one of the detectives asks him directly if he killed her. Appleby pauses, then says yes. That answer changed everything in the room. He tells them she was strangled. He knows that much. He doesn't remember what he used. He can't explain why it went that far. After she stopped moving, he covered her body with a blue tarp he found nearby. He says he didn't want anyone to see her like that. He claims he didn't think she was dead. The detectives don't interrupt. They listen. When it's over, they know. Every doubt collapses into certainty. He killed her so she couldn't identify him. So he wouldn't go back to prison. In November of 2005, Ted Hoover, also known as Benjamin Appleby, stands trial for the assault and first-degree murder of Ollie Kemp. The jury doesn't take long. 2 hours. On December 5th, the verdict is read. Guilty. People didn't cry at first. They just breathed. Appleby is sentenced to 50 years to life. No parole until the middle of the century. He will not walk free again. Justice doesn't restore what was taken. It never does. But Roger Kemp finally reaches a place where his daughter can be laid to rest without unanswered questions pressing in. Those close to the case say plainly, without Roger, it might never have been solved. He didn't let the world forget. He didn't slow down when it hurt. Out of that resolve, something else begins. Roger and his wife decide they don't want another family standing where they stood. They create a self-defense program for girls. They name it in Ollie's honor. The first class is held quietly, in a basement, inside City Hall. No spectacle, just a father making sure his daughter's story doesn't end where her life did. It started small, 12 people in a room, folding chairs. No expectation of scale. Then the numbers grew. Tens of thousands of women have gone through the classes since then. Messages arrive from people Roger has never met, saying the same thing in different words, that what they learned helped them survive something they didn't see coming. That's enough for him. One life would have been enough. He never talks about the numbers like they're the point. The work expands in other directions too. Roger partners with law enforcement on a nationwide billboard campaign. Faces of wanted suspects appear along highways and city roads. Cases that had gone quiet start breathing again. Families who felt forgotten hear phones ring for the first time in years. Hope returns in places where it had thinned out. People who work with him say they've never met anyone like him. At one point, he's invited to the White House. Publicly recognized. Not for politics. Not for power. For refusing to stop caring. None of it erases what happened. Roger lived through what no parent is meant to endure. Losing a child. Losing her violently. Losing her in a place that was supposed to be safe. And yet, instead of turning inward, he builds outward. His foundation teaches girls and women how to protect themselves. His billboards help identify people who thought they'd disappeared. Arrests are made. Cases move again. You could tell he never did it for recognition. When Roger speaks about Ollie now, there's still pain there. Always will be. This was never how he imagined she'd make a difference in the world. But he's proud of her. He believes she would be proud too. They couldn't save Ollie. That truth never changes. But they've saved others. And in that, her legacy keeps going. That brings us to the end of tonight's stories. Thank you for spending part of your night here with me. I hope this quiet time gave you a chance to slow down, even while reflecting on lives that will never be forgotten. If you're getting ready to sleep, you can leave the rest of the night behind now. Let your thoughts become a little lighter, and let the silence take over. Take good care of yourself, and thank you for listening. I'll be here again soon. Good night.